everybody. Welcome. I am your host, Eric Adore. What we want you to do is be able to get some insights and some takeaways on what can help to fuel your business in 2025. We're really fortunate today to have our guest on. Dan Orlando is really navigating these waters and creating a path to what he's calling to be a fractional sales leader. And his company coming out the gate is Logan Business Development. Thank you, Dan, for coming on our show today. We really appreciate it. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Eric. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to get your wisdom and your insight as you're coming out as an entrepreneur running Logan Business Development. We're so excited to hear about what your journey has been like and what it helped, what keeps you going in your business. And just diving right into it, what inspired you to start your business?
Sure. So I started as a salesperson in the tech space in 2018, early 2018. Really enjoyed it, had a great experience, worked for some great companies. But I saw the landscape shifting away from, an area where I felt as a full-time AE for one company. I didn't see that being in my best interest anymore. And I saw the industry shifting towards a different type of sales for lots of different reasons I'm sure we'll get into. And I saw an area where SaaS especially was looking to outsource a lot of the things that it was doing, including implementation. My largest client right now is a company that was part of the people who founded it were part of the company I was working at the time, and they were doing implementation, which is obviously key in the tech world, and that became something outsourced. They were willing to make that a third party operation. And I thought to myself, why would sales not be something that mid-market tech and other companies be open to doing in the near future? So that's where the idea came from. And about a year later, I started Logan Business Development after some serious planning.
So you're seeing all this shift in the industry, and you just had this, sounds like this aha moment. Like, why would it, like, let's give it a try. And then
Sure.
a year later, you're out the gate, really, I would say kind of frontiering, exploring all this, which is inspiring. So what's the story behind your company's name and brand?
So the company's named after my dog, Logan. He's a Choco Labrador. He's obviously my best friend. He's my little buddy. And at first, I was considering coming out with a lot of businesses, and there's nothing wrong with that. They come out with a name that's very, maybe a mashup of a couple words about exactly what they do, something like that. I could have did something with sales in the title, and I came out with Logan because look, my dog is a great relationship, and obviously anyone who's had a dog knows that they're a great partner and they're there for you. And I feel like in sales and business development, that aspect of it has gotten washed away a little bit. We're in a world, especially from the SaaS space, where companies, once they hit a certain point, they're hiring armies of salespeople, and it's more about they just give you a territory and they want you to spam it, and it's a numbers game, and that is important. I'm not saying sales isn't a numbers game or that there's aspects of just kind of casting a big net, but I think you do also need to keep the personal relationship as part of it. And I think that's missing. And that I just felt was kind of perfect. That's something I wanted to keep in my mind. That, sales is about relationships, it is about connection, and just making the name of the company my dog just kind of made that a little bit easier to keep at the front of my mind.
Oh man, so yeah, it's awesome. It's just, I hear it what you're saying. It just reminds you of that part of your business that you want to remain personable and meaningful, uh,
Hmm.
as meaningful as your relationship with Logan and being your best friend. Sounds like you're saying like I want to come out, as much as you're aware of the numbers game, to really be partners with the people that and the businesses that you're helping in a way that's meaningful for both you guys. That's so inviting. The world needs more of that. So you're inspiring us all coming out, the gate. You've been out the gate with Logan Business Development for the last year.
Hmm.
What were some of the biggest challenges you were facing in the early days?
Well, right now, I'm not going to say I'm the first person through the door to do fractional sales. I'm not, but it's still very early. And I think that is something that is a little bit intimidating off the bat because there's pluses and minuses to doing something that hasn't been done on a large scale before. Obviously, one of the pluses is that it's not as saturated of a space, but then also, man, you're really flying into cloud cover. You're really doing something that doesn't have a clear roadmap. It's something not everybody's going to understand, both in your personal life and when you're maybe approaching someone at a trade show or at a chamber of commerce meeting, something like that. So there's challenges to it. And then there's the everyday challenges of being an entrepreneur. You're stepping out, you're on your own. Doesn't matter how good the idea is, and I've heard this from lots of people who have been in my shoes before. Doesn't matter how good the idea is, you're still going to be terrified. It's still going to be scary. There's still a lot of pressure in every decision you make. And I think a big part of being a successful entrepreneur is knowing that obviously you need to make responsible decisions, but if you're scared or if you feel like, hey, there's a lot of pressure on this, that's not a sign to necessarily walk away. That might be a sign to lean into, the fear there and lean into the fire. So there's a lot of navigating. There's 100 things to learn as an entrepreneur in your first, year, and I'd imagine even in your second year, which I'm not at yet. But there's lots of things like that, and also in your personal life, and this is something I know you and I have talked about. If things are going great in your business or they're not, you're going to have to explain to the people in your personal life that maybe have never been an entrepreneur that sometimes you're going to have to, maybe be busy on that Friday night, maybe having dinner with the family or going to an event when there's nothing specific on your calendar is going to be tough because you need to get something done. It's not your boss telling you that. It's if I don't get it done, this my business fails. So being able to balance those things and have that self-discipline and also maintain personal relationships, it's hard. It's definitely hard.
And you coming out with such thank you for reminding us, the part of being an entrepreneur and just having fear. And
Hmm.
it's natural to have that fear. And, you're sharing with us the importance of like taking action too. And sometimes you taking action might require being out of times that you didn't ordinarily do it. But if you're passionate about your business and your dog Logan and caring about those people that you have to take care of, you do what it takes to get it done. And sometimes if you're having a moment where you have the space, take it and work on your business. That's a message I'm hearing, and
Absolutely.
that's definitely something that an entrepreneur and being an entrepreneur myself, we struggle with starting with the fear, and then like how do you balance out action all the time? And you're figuring it out. You're coming out the gate, and
Absolutely.
your story is meaningful to us because it's a great reminder of also where our head can be at. It's okay to face fear.
Hmm.
Um, so being, and if you're not here yet, that's okay because we want all of us to hear and our audience to know. Sometimes entrepreneurs, and they start this business, you're coming in a place where you're saying there's not a lot of competition, but man, I'm carving the way. How do
Hmm.
you feel right now? Like, do you feel like you've got any defining moment where you're like, man, I am on track? Have you reached that point yet?
I would say signing my first client was obviously a great feeling. It provided validation that this idea was not just something that's in my head. Obviously, when I'm thinking about it for about a year and planning it out in my head, it's still something that could just be not realistic. But then once I started seeing interest in the business and realizing there was a need for this, and I see it every day. I just had, conversations yesterday with people looking for this exact type of service. When you realize, hey, you're actually right about this, that is a great feeling. But on the same token, right now, and you touched on this a little bit in the question, where the sales, especially B2B sales, what it's going through right now, is this moment where no one really knows where to go next. I think they know sales is going to look a lot different in the next year or two, but there's no set answer for where we're headed. So, really, what I'm doing right now is I'm providing an alternative, but that alternative may shift with time. Like we're all trying to figure out what that next stage of sales is, and I can tell you that, in terms of like for outbound right now, I can tell you across the board, and maybe people won't admit this in my business, but I'm happy to admit it, and I tell this to my clients. You
Please.
know, no one is, no one knows exactly what's working with outbound right now. The problem is people are inundated, both in their personal lives and their professional lives. They're getting a million emails a day. I don't care how well they're written, how personalized they are. They're getting a million phone calls about nothing. And you have to be able to get out from under that. And really, what we're finding, and also, I should add, look, budgets are what they are. This is not 2021 when money was flowing. And if you were able to reach out to someone with something interesting that maybe wasn't top of mind, like I used to sell a product that was kind of a precursor to AI. It was called Yext Answers. And at the time, it was brand new. It was something that was not on a lot of businesses' mind. It wasn't something they were looking for. And you could write a compelling email and get someone interested in sitting down with you, in 2021 to learn about it. And right now, what you're seeing, and I'm not talking about that product specific, for anyone I work with right now, what you're seeing is that it's more about right place, right time. Someone's not going to look into investing significant money for something that's not top of mind because that's not how they're budgeting at the moment. So that volume becomes very, very important. And it's not so much about how well did you write the email? Did you crush that cold call? It's did you get out enough in front of enough people that you reach someone that actually needs what you're selling right now? And that makes it sound like what I do less scientific, and that's not the case. But it makes it seem like what I'm doing is not as hard as it is, but in reality, it is. There's lots. You still have to get someone on the boat. You have to negotiate a deal with them. But that's the truth of where we are, and that might shift again. So, sorry if this kind of drifted from
No,
ultimately
no,
past, but
it's on track because
yeah.
what you're talking about. You're saying was there a moment that you feel like you were right on track, and you're basically giving a true confession. You
Mhm.
know, signing that first client was like, oh
Yep.
man, okay, like there is a demand for this, but it sounds like you just haven't sat in that seat and become complacent or comfortable because you understand how fast everything is moving and how much noise there is in the business. So that one client, as much as it validated your idea is in demand, it's really about you're saying to us, if I can rephrase it, like, listen, adapt. We're in changing times right now. Be agile and be
Mhm.
adaptable because what might have worked today might not work tomorrow, especially as we're dealing with all this noise all the time. That you're saying, when you're right on track, you're right on track for 2025,
Mhm.
March, maybe, might not be applicable for November of 2025 because of any trends change, but you're reminding us to stay with those, keep your ear to the ground, like what are the trends that are changing, and you surely know a lot of noise, and really about make sure you bring value. Whatever happens, just bring that value. That is what you're telling us, right? Like,
Value. If it's
yeah.
something that's maybe not your favorite thing, if you don't want it to be your calling card, but it works for right now, be open to it. That's absolutely something I would say. And also, you have to also want to say no. Like if you're going to be a fractional person, you're a consultant on some level, whether you're fully viewed as a consultant or on some level, you're viewed to be the expert, and you have to be comfortable saying no. And if you feel in your expert opinion something's a bad idea. And to give you an example from even just this week. Some of my clients are looking into dialers. Actually, we just brought on a dialer, like different tools for more efficient dialing, which if you're in sales, that's a big thing. And we were looking at options that were more of like the different names from machine gun, nukes. Like, hey, they dial 5 numbers at a time, and then whoever picks up, they hang up the other four, and then they put you on with that other number. And I said,
Yes.
no, that's a bad idea. And I one client pushed back at first, and I had to lay out for them. I go, you ever get those personal calls, like, like to your number about like some auto warranty or some loan you didn't apply for? And they go, yeah. I go, you ever notice there's either a beep when you first pick up that phone or it takes a little while? Like, hey, there's a delay and then
The
somebody comes
pause.
online.
Yes.
When that happens to me personally in my personal life, or if it's something for the business, I'm already like 80% like don't want to talk to. Even if someone comes on and they're a legitimate phone call, I'm already in
Yeah.
a bad state of mind. Like this is annoying me. Why would I want to start every sales call on that level to save an extra couple of seconds, a minute? Like to
Yeah.
me,
Well, that worked in 2018, right? Like, 2018,
when it first came out.
19, right? When it first came out. So that's a point where, so that's something that makes sense. So, you're helping your clients transition into what's working today, but to really bring in where people are at with their mind to not be distracted. By the way, real funny thing.
Mhm.
When I fall for those calls in front of my wife goes, "Was there a pause?" And I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "Sucker,"
Yep.
because
And so
she,
why would I
every
want to
time I
brand
fall for it,
myself?
like,
Why would I want to brand myself that way? That's, I could become reaching out with something extremely legitimate because I am. I'm not going to sell something that's not. But I've already started out like I look like a scammer. So to me, I put my foot down on that and it was respected. And look, I've been in situations both as a contractor where I regretted at times maybe not saying like, hey, I'm the expert, I'm pushing on this. And that's part of, by the way, why I wanted to go into, building something as a third party, as a sales as a service, because when you work full time for someone, and you're a full time employee, you really like, hey, you really don't have a leg to stand on unless you've already have a great relationship with your boss. With this, I want to be like, hey, you brought me on to be an expert in sales, and I'm telling you why this is maybe a bad idea, or I'm telling you why this is maybe a good idea, and you want that freedom. But yeah, like I had to put my foot down with that, and I don't regret it because I don't want to reach out for somebody and invest my time and my clients' money in trying to sell their product. And we're already starting out like, with a whole, if you're a football fan, you're starting out with a 10-yard holding call for no reason. It just doesn't make sense. So
Yeah, so
you have to
that
be able to do
brand,
that.
that making sure that like their brand doesn't represent that immediate irritation that you
Yeah.
just described. And then, as a business leader, you're telling us, about having enough courage to tell your clients what they need to hear,
Hmm.
not what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And the price to pay, if you tell them what they want to hear, is far greater than having enough courage to tell them what they need to hear, your reputation, their brand, the money that they're spending for the work that they're hiring you for, and you want it to be effective and have metrics,
Hmm.
and don't and make sure you stand for that. And by you doing that, we get that. So leading into 2025, your business or your industry or the world, what are the two biggest challenges that you see we're facing in 2025? Your business, the industry, whatever. Two of the biggest things that are in front of you see that can't be unseen.
Sure. So from a business perspective, I think again, the outreach is huge. Where that's just not having the success it had in previous years, in part because some of that personal connection was missing. You're just another person sending an email to their inbox that they may or may not even see. That is huge. And that is something that, via Logan, I'm going to be spending a lot more time in the coming year at trade shows, at Chamber of Commerce, meetings, meeting with people one on one. That's used to be a nice accent to a sales career in recent years, and it's becoming a priority. So that is absolutely, step one. The second side of it, I say the second biggest thing facing really any company right now, and I'll stick in the SaaS world just kind of, because that's where I do most of my business. I think there's just an oversaturation of tools, and people now I think they get down in the weeds like, hey, our tech stack looks like XYZ. If we do this one thing, do we have to then pull this string? Do we have to pull that string? And that's something where you don't want to get down into that conversation because it makes it really hard to close a deal, even if you build a ton of value. So I think SaaS companies need to be presenting themselves in a way that's more about the solution and less about how amazing they are. And that's something I've also said to my clients. When a customer is buying, and this is going to be something that's more geared towards specifically your sales listeners. When a customer is buying or looking into buying something, they only care about their problem. They don't need to hear about how you're the most amazing product, the most amazing service that's ever been made, which, by the way, everything that's ever sold anything says that about themselves. And they just need to know that you're able to solve their solution. And I think a trap, a lot of, excuse me, a lot of even mid-market sales companies and larger sales company or software companies fall into is that they are obsessed with what they can offer and they say that first. And not just like to get someone in the door, they just want to go over in their demos, hey, this is how amazing we are and this is all the things that we've done. And I'm not saying this to bash products. I think, there's good services and there's good products out there. But you have to understand when someone comes and talks to you and considers investing money, because B2B sales, they're investments. They're not, hey, I'm buying a big screen TV because I had a good month at work and I want to reward myself. It has to be an investment. It needs to be about what their problem is and can you solve it. And if you keep that front of mind, you will do better. If you're spending half your demo talking about how amazing your product is and trying to sell them on things they haven't talked about, you're going to lose. And I see so many salespeople do that.
Yeah, and they don't want to deal with it. So
Yeah.
so this is for our listeners. This is for you and I, right?
Hmm.
Our last podcast, we had Cypher Cybersecurities 2025. Their
Hmm.
biggest challenge or their biggest thing in front is nobody cares who Cypher Cybersecurity is. They only care about their problems, right?
Yep.
So the message, I'm going to hit the home, the message you're sharing from me.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about business fuel, business coaching. They only care about, can I solve their problem? Nobody
Yep.
cares about Logan business development. They only care about their problems and can you solve my problem?
Yep.
Well said, my friend.
Thank you.
Bravo, clap. This is a message that to help people and
Hmm.
sales to actually be better at sales. Like you're sending a message. Forget the world is not embracing it anymore if you're not approaching that way. But we're talking about helping salespeople right now just survive.
Yeah.
Their family, get a contract, listen to the problem so you can actually present the solution. Bravo, bravo. I love it. So with that being said, you're in the middle of doing all this. What habits and routines do you have to try to balance your business life and your personal life?
Yeah, and honestly, that is even still a work in progress as I, bring on more business and start growing and looking into new tools. It's something I'm constantly tweaking. I'd say the biggest challenge is, having a set schedule when you work for yourself and trying to, keep everything that you need to get done in a given day. Because one thing I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to, you might say, "Hey, this is gonna take a half hour to get done," and it doesn't. And then now you're taking pieces from another part of your schedule, and you're taking more pieces from another part, and it's really hard to gauge like when things are gonna get done and like getting things off of your to-do list. So for me, it's really important to get an early start to the day. And get the things I have to get done in my personal life, like walking the actual Logan, things like that. Getting in and out of like the shower and getting over to the office. One thing I've really found is I work in a co-working space right now, NMAS in Morristown. If you're in North Jersey, they're fantastic. And I work there, and look, it's money you could argue I don't need to spend right now. Like, you could say that I don't have to do that. I could work from a home office. Right now, the operation in terms of full time is just me. But me getting up and me having somewhere to go gives me a lot more energy in the morning. Having to do my hair, like, comb my hair, get dressed, that's big. That mentally puts me in a better spot. And that's something that I really, I think is really important if you're an entrepreneur. You need to be able, and it's a fine balance, right? Because you're not working a 9 to 5. In the beginning, it's really going to be the majority of your life. So it's hard to say, like, hey, I'm going to take this out of my home because that makes it harder. But if you can do it at least for, half the day or a full day and go work somewhere else and make yourself kind of get up in the morning, it's gonna make things a lot easier for you. It's gonna put you in a better state of mind and you're gonna get a lot more done.
And managing your energy and
Hmm.
the option to work from home, it becomes a trappings, right? And then to know
Absolutely.
to go out and manage your energy, the co-work space is invigorating you. You're going to energize even if you're there for a half a day. I mean, that's a great piece of business advice for sure for entrepreneurs. Get out, get work in a place that gives you more energy. So what's one piece of advice that you wish you received earlier in your career?
That's a great question. I would say this is more just general, and I think this ties in. If I could go back and talk to 20-year-old Dan Orlando, what I would tell him is to do things in your professional life in your 20s that's going to give you more flexibility in your 30s, and then spend your 30s setting yourself up to have more flexibility in your 40s. I think my generation, like the one before ours, was maybe not taught the best about actually setting yourself up. We were maybe taught more about you go get a good job, the company's going to take care of you as long as you do what you need to do, and then you're good. And just as long as you keep your health, you're going to be coasting until you're 65. Not coasting, but you're going to be in a good situation until you're 65. Then you'll have your retirement set up and it all works out. And you save the things you want to accomplish in your personal life, some of them at least until 65. And you look at it that way. And I think that's a huge mistake. And I get why it was why, I get why we were taught it, but I look back, I wish I spent my 20s more focused on making money and making money sooner rather than saying, hey, if I put in my time here, I'm going to move up and be put in a better situation. And would have given me more flexibility now, which would allow me to be in a better spot when I'm 40. And I feel like, to be honest, I feel like I am making up for lost time a bit, and that's something where I wish, I wasn't doing. So I know that wasn't directly like operating a business question, but I do think it's important because it's the big reason why I'm doing this, right? And to kind of for most of the viewers won't know, I was a business journalist first, and I wanted to be a journalist growing up. And I accomplished that. I covered the commercial real estate industry and I covered the restaurant industry and some sports and some other business things over the course of my career in my 20s, based out of New York. And I got to do some really amazing things, and it helped me in sales because I was around decision makers, high-end decision makers, very wealthy people and powerful people in New York, earning their trust in a different way, writing stories about them and profiles and news. And while that was fantastic, I wish I was taking, more of a business-like approach to my journalism career. I wish I was thinking more along the lines of, hey, maybe I'll have a side hustle and it doesn't have to be something that makes me like a living right now, but I can grow it into something else. At the time, I was more focused on how can I, and this is actually probably the best answer for your question. It took me a while to get there. I was focused on how can Dan Orlando start something or get a job that sets him up right now. That's 6 months from now. His money problems in terms of like,
Oh,
hey, his
I see.
savings are where he wants them to be. He can go out and buy a house like right now. And I wish I wasn't thinking that way. I wish maybe at 22, I was open to taking, low paying jobs that might have made me travel around the world or something that might have given me experience. At 22, I was worried about like, hey, am I going to be like able to buy a house at 25? And I wish that wasn't my thought process.
So
Uh,
you were trapped in the short game, and you didn't.
Short
Your
game.
mind wasn't ready to think about the long game,
Yes.
and you didn't build that in till later. But it sounds like now you're
Hmm.
thinking about the long game,
Yeah.
and bringing all that experience with you. But the short game is what kept you distracted, right? Like the shiny thing
Yeah.
was what distracted you, and that is that's wonderful for you to share with us. And, wherever you're at in your life, think about the long game, and especially
Yeah.
the opportunity younger, line it up and believe it can come through, because now all the things that you've done to build up to here, you're here now. When
Hmm.
once you decided on the long game, right? Logan Business Development is, part of your long game, and a year ago, and all that stuff before that, and your journey. So, part of this, we go through this, and you sound like you've got this, you're sharing this amazing experience you have in your life, and all these things that you've learned, this wisdom and these insights. Part of sales, man, especially, is failure.
Hmm.
How do you handle failure, and what failure has taught you? What valuable lesson has failure taught you?
Sure. So I'll say off the bat that I was lucky. My dad's actually been in the sales field for 40 years. He sells cars, and I never thought I was going to follow in his footsteps. But I remember him telling me, I don't know, long before I was in sales, I think it was that, look, hey, the best salespeople in the world, they close like 25 to 30% of their deals. So that perspective is a major advantage for me because it's important to understand that even if you're amazing at your job, if you're the Peyton Manning of sales, Tom Brady of sales, you are still going to get rejected 70% of the time. And you just have to be okay with that. That's part of the job. And right now in the sales field, if you're working full time for a SaaS company or another mid-sized to large company, look, here's the open secret in sales. Nobody has good inbound right now. Nobody has pipeline to give to their salespeople to close. Nobody does at all. They don't have what they need to have. So there's going to be frustrating months. There's going to be quarters that don't go your way. And that just is what it is. So you have to have the mindset. And this kind of ties back to not looking at the short game. It like you're going to be under a lot of pressure at all times. That's part of sales. And it's harder now than it's ever been before. But just know that if you keep getting better at what you keep studying it, you keep being a student of the game, and you keep working at it, there's going to be the good months, there's going to be the good quarters. And just keep in mind, like, hey, are you bankrolling your money? Are you putting things like where they should go? Are you focused on when you have a good month? Do you change your lifestyle? Do you think about, hey, man, things are good now, so I'm good right now. When things go bad, I'm going to slow down my lifestyle. Like, no, like that's something also I wish I told like my younger self. Like, focus on that bigger picture, not what, hey, I can pay the rent for this apartment so I can afford it. Maybe you can't. Like maybe not that you can't afford it, but maybe that's not the best place to spend your money. So these are all things that, hey, if you're in sales right now, when things are bad, you keep your head up and you keep getting better at the job because it's a skill that you're going to use for your entire life, no matter what you do. And just know that, hey, better stuff's coming as long as you adapt.
That's awesome. And then that part with your dad,
Hmm.
man, that
Yeah.
that's some great wisdom on what those ratios of what you're actually going to get, and the rest. It sounds like your dad is a very experienced, wise man to brush off the other 70%. That's not what it was about. It's the 30%,
Yeah.
25 or 30% that he could close. And he's the man, by the way, because that seems like pretty high numbers. So he had to be the man, coming from that industry. That industry is you know, that's you work hard in that industry for sure with those
For
numbers.
sure. And one other thing I'll also, and this kind of goes back to a question before, but now that I'm thinking about it, so he, one thing he taught me, this was definitely before I was in sales. He was telling me once that he was selling, I think, an Explorer. This is like 20 or something years ago. And it was this family that, they were kind of on the fence about it. And they had mentioned that they go down the shore every summer. And he just kind of randomly asked in the middle of the conversation, like, hey, like, so like when you go, like, do you take the Parkway? Do you jump on 95? And like different questions like that. And the takeaway was, and eventually he closed the deal, and he was telling me, I'm like, well, why did that matter? Like at the time as a kid, I didn't understand. And he was just saying, like, because now they're picturing themselves driving the car, like that, whatever route they take, they just pictured themselves in the car. And while I think that's great advice, that ties in when I got into business to business sales as an adult, because we talked about before. It's the person's problem that you're solving. And if you focus on building the world where they have a solution and that you happen to be the solution, that is so much more effective. My dad easily could have tried to close that deal by talking about, how great different features of the Explorer were, and it probably wouldn't have got it done. And I do feel like in a lot of SaaS sales and a lot of B2B sales, people do go that route. So, since we were talking about it, that was another thing that my dad taught me long before I thought I was going to be in sales that has absolutely made me a little bit more dangerous, for sure.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Hopefully, is your dad still alive? I'm sorry to
Yeah,
ask.
yeah, he is. He is.
Thanks, Dad. We're gonna make sure he listens to the podcast.
Yeah.
From me too. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna end this, and we're gonna start wrapping up. But I do have one last question to ask you, and you're gonna do it as like a mic drop when you finish.
Yeah.
And uh, uh, Eric Godoy, of BizFuel here. I want to thank Dan Orlando, our fractional sales leader and founder of Logan Business Development. They're out there, carving away into a blue ocean of doing fractional sales leadership, and then hacking their way. If your company ever needs some fractional sales, Dan's the man to talk to. So as we do this, and you do your mic drop, if you could give one message to future entrepreneurs and leaders, what would it be? And when you finish, you put your hand up and you drop that mic. Let me hear
All right. Love
it.
that. Number one, it's going to take a level of dedication that you haven't had to, do before, and that's okay. That's a great thing, and that's gonna feel really good once you get into it. It's gonna start feeling like a more, like now that I've gotten more into it, I actually enjoy the hard work and I enjoy the challenge. The other side of it is there was a time when starting your own business was very, very risky, compared to having a full-time job. And you know what? I'll say now that while it's certainly, it's risky, it's not something that's locked in. Look at the world around us right now. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're considering, do I stay with the 9 to 5 job? You don't know if you're going to have that next year either, no matter how good you are at the job. That's just the reality. So if you're on the fence about it, this isn't necessarily going to be the risk that it was 20 years ago. So while it's scary, the world we live in right now, there's really no way to look around that. One of the advantages, and I decided to look at it this way, look, I'm taking that uncertainty, I'm taking that, I'm taking the unreliability of full-time jobs right now, and I'm using that as a strength. I go, well, there's no better time than doing it right now. It might have been crazy for me to do this, 5 years ago, but now it's not. So if you're worried about it, you are going to be scared. You are going to have anxiety over what you're doing. If you feel like there's no way that your business model can fail, that your idea can fail, it probably will. Like, actually, that's probably not a great sign. So if you're on the fence about it, and if you can handle the anxiety of going out there and having to put yourself out there and take that risk, there's probably not going to be a better time in your lifetime than right now to take that shot while things are kind of uncertain in general, and see if you can build something for yourself. And
Awesome. Thank you, Dan Orlando, Logan Business Development, amazing leader. Thank you so much for being on our podcast, BizFuel. Have a good one.
thanks, Eric.